Welcome, everyone, to the Minnesota Association for College Admission Counseling College Fair. We're so excited to have you here. We have some great schools for you. My name is Greg, and I'll be your facilitator. A couple of housekeeping things. Just remember that your camera and your microphone are turned off. The panelists cannot see or hear you. If you want to communicate or ask questions, please use the Q&A button that you see on your screen. Now, you can ask questions at any time, and our panelists might want to answer them as you ask, or they could choose to save them all at the end. Remember that there are other sessions going on. Please check back on the schedule to see if there's anything else that would be of interest to you. And this session, as are all the sessions, are being recorded and eventually will be available at strivescan.com/Minnesota. And I'll drop that address there in the chat for you so you can remember to take a look at that. Without further ado, let's pass it off to our first presenter, Scott from Moorhead State.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Westby. I work at Minnesota State University Moorhead, and I am happy to be with you all. I'll be part one of 4 presenters across Minnesota institutions that will be presenting to you. So I'm going to let my partners introduce themselves as well. We can start with Damir.
Hi, everybody. My name is Damir Robinson. I'm an admissions officer at Carleton College, and I'm super excited to be here with you all this evening.
All right, Stephen.
Well, hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having a fabulous day. My name is Stephen Thomas. I am an admissions officer representing Minnesota State University, Mankato. Welcome, everyone.
And finally, Scott H. Oh, you're muted, Scott, just so you know.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Hochhalter. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions for the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and I'm glad that you are with this session this evening.
Yes, and we are all here to speak to you about the topic of, am I going to find someone like me? Now, what we want to talk about are resources and support for students of diverse backgrounds, whether you are a student from a historically underrepresented group, an LGBTQ+ student. We want to speak to some of those experiences and the supports at each one of our institutions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a little bit of information about each one of our institutions and the supports that we have set up for those students. But throughout, we also want to take your questions. There is that Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. So please make use of that. Ask us questions. If it's a general question, we can speak to it in the moment, or if it's institution specific, we may type out a response ourselves in the Q&A, but either way, we'll want to get answers to your questions. So I am going to share our screen so that we can present information to you. So give me one moment here. All righty. Okay, hopefully y'all can see that. As I said, we're representing 4 different institutions, and our first one is going to be Carleton College. So I will invite Damir to get us started.
Perfect. All right. So I am going to try to be as respectful as time as possible. I tend to ramble, and so I'm going to try to keep this as short as I can. So Carleton College, right, we're a small liberal arts institution. We're located in Northfield, Minnesota. So we're about 45 minutes south of Minneapolis. As you all are from Minnesota, I hope you all are familiar with Carleton. If not, I hope I can get you all interested, at least in Carleton. And so the first thing that I will do, right, is just tell you all how we think about the underrepresented identity at Carleton, right? I think oftentimes there is the automatic assumption that by underrepresented, right, we oftentimes associate that with race, ethnicity, and culture, right? But at Carleton, we take that into account, right? But we still look beyond that, and we think about gender identity, sexual orientation, right? Ability, disability, right? A religious affiliation, right? If you're coming from a rural area versus a metropolitan area, right? Geographical diversity is also something that we do take into account when we are thinking about the underrepresented student experience at Carleton, at least. And so, Scott, you can go to the next slide. So I will talk about kind of the different support systems that we do have offered on campus, right? Starting with the academic support that we do offer, right? And so we do offer, right, advisors that you will have at Carleton, right? So you get a minimum of 3 advisors during your time at Carleton, right? So you have an advisor, 2 academic advisors, and then a comps advisor. The academic advisors are there to lead you through your 4 years. And so you'll have one for 2 years and then another one for the next 2 years. That comps advisor is someone who guides you through your comps project, right? Your senior comprehensive project. That's the senior thesis that all students have to do. I won't talk too much about that, but you will have someone who is there guiding you through doing that process. In addition, we have an academic skills center with a writing center and a math skills center. And so if you're anyone who struggles with your writing or thinks you're an amazing writer and just wants someone to read over your drafts or anything like that, gives you any tips or tricks, oh, that's so hard to say, then you can go to our writing center. The math skills center is the same, right? If you're in any math class, right, you need help with any problem sets, right, we have trained tutors there for you. But beyond that, right, we have our Office of Accessibility Resources. And so this office is there to support students who have either learning disabilities or physical disabilities, right? Making sure that they are communicating with faculty members across campus, right? Making sure that you have the support or additional support that you may need. They also have a peer mentorship program where you can be paired up with a student that is either a sophomore through a senior, right? As a first-year student to ultimately help you get acclimated. And that is something that I will repeat multiple times because almost all of our offices, all of our student-facing offices have peer mentors. And so the next one is TRIO, right, or Student Support Services. And so that office is for first generation low-income students, or again, students with documented disabilities. And so they will be your academic advisor, right? One of the staff members there. You can also get a peer mentor. CUBE and Focus are specific kind of colloquium groups. And so they are specific to students, again, first generation low-income students or students with documented disabilities that have specific interests, right? So CUBE is more of kind of the quantitative realm, right? Where Focus is more of if you are an underrepresented student and you want to go into STEM. Next slide, Scott. And so this is kind of just the general overview of what we have to offer in terms of campus life, right? 200 plus student run organizations, right? 19 varsity sports. And we do have a club and intramural sports as well. 5 a cappella groups, right? In addition to the choirs that we have, right? And in addition to the orchestras and different things that you can be involved in, the dance companies. We have a student run radio station. Our career center is a really great resource for finding job opportunities, internships, externships, grad school opportunities. And then the TRIP-CE, as we like to call it, or the long name, the Center for Community and Civic Engagement, is for any student who wants to be involved in service work. Next slide. But under kind of the 200 plus student organizations that we have, I do wanted to highlight some of these groups, and this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of our affinity groups on campus. So as you see, right, our Black Student Association and our African and Caribbean Association, right? We have Mosaic, we have a group that we call Cutie Pop, right? The queer, questioning, and trans people of color on campus, right? We have tons and tons of groups. I think that building community is kind of our biggest kind of ideal at Carleton, right, is having community and finding your people. Ultimately, that's what this session is supposed to be about. And so these are our student-run organizations, right? We have offices in place that are there to support our students, but we also have student-run organizations that are not run by any kind of adults. Well, college students are technically adults, right? Although I never felt like an adult when I was a college student, I will say. But definitely, right, we have all of these student-run organizations, and you can be involved in all of them. You can be involved in one of them. You can be involved in none of them, but they are there, right, for you to find community, to find support, to find your people ultimately. Next slide, please. So in terms of residential life, right, students always ask about residential life, right, at Carleton. And so we are a residential campus, right? Housing is guaranteed all 4 years during your time at Carleton. 96% of our students do live on campus. Residential life is the biggest way, right, ultimately to build community. And so the housing options that we have are kind of, I guess, expansive, right? So we have dorms, we have houses, we have suite styles, but I did want to highlight some of these interest houses that we do have on campus. And so we have houses that are based on affinity, right? And so we have these 4 cultural houses, right? The first 4 are cultural houses, right? And so Freedom House is for students who identify as Black, African American, or within the African diaspora. We have CASA, which is for our Latinx students, right? We have Asia House, which is for our Asian and Asian American identifying students, right? Stimson House is kind of our cultural hub, and so it's not specific to any culture or background or ethnicity, but many of our students who identify as underrepresented do live in those houses. We have Cutie BIPOC House, right, which is for students who are either queer, trans, right, Black, Indigenous, or other people of color, right? We have Gender House for students who are on some journey, right, of finding where they may fall on the gender spectrum, or if they don't fall on the gender spectrum at all, right? And then we have houses that are specific to religious affiliation. And so all of these spaces are for you to be surrounded by those who have shared experiences as you, right? So you can feel as comfortable and feel as authentic as possible in a place, right, that is majorly not, right, that specific subset of individuals. Next slide, please. So here are some of our office resources that we have. We have an Office of Intercultural Life that focuses on our BIPOC students, right, our domestic students of color, our Office of International Student Life, our Gender and Sexuality Center, our Student Health and Counseling, where we have registered nurses and licensed counselors, and a licensed psychiatrist there, right? Our Office of Health Promotion, right? Both of these offices work in tandem oftentimes, right? To make sure that students are healthy, whether that be mentally, physically, emotionally, socially, right? And we have additional kind of help for students, right? So students who are dealing with food insecurity, right? We have a cupboard on campus, right? Students who can't necessarily afford to have certain winter clothing, right? We have a Carlton winter wardrobe. We have emergency funding if you need to fly home at the next day or something like that. If you need help buying additional winter clothing or business clothing or anything like that, we have additional funds there. And then we have this Mellon Mays undergraduate fellowship, right? And so that is a fellowship particularly for students of color, right? BIPOC students who want to go into the field of, or the world of academia. And so you're prepared to do that, right? It is a fellowship and it comes with a scholarship as well. So you are paid to do the research that you are doing during your time at Carleton, right? Ultimately, to diversify the world of academia is the goal of that fellowship. Next slide. Is that my last slide? That was my last slide. Yes, so I'll stop there. That's kind of like a weird cliffhanger, but I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you all have kind of when we open it up for questions, or in the chat. Please feel free to drop your questions there. And I'll pass it on.
All right, thank you, Damir. Yeah, that was a lot of good information about resources to make you feel at home. So again, if you have specific questions on any of those, hit up that Q&A feature and Damir or any of us can respond to any of your questions. I will present on a little bit of information about what MSU Moorhead has to offer. First of all, if you're not familiar with MSU Moorhead, it is a 4-year public university in the Minnesota state system, very similar to Minnesota State Mankato in that regard. We're in Moorhead, Minnesota, which is on the very western part of the state. We actually share a border with Fargo, North Dakota. So we're all a part of that Fargo-Moorhead area. In relation to this topic, I want to address 4 different resources that we have on campus to make students feel at home in different ways. This program called Smart Start, our Rainbow Dragon Center, other identity centers that we have on campus, and some of our student organizations. So first of all, we have a program that is called Smart Start. SMART stands for Student Mentoring Academic Resource Team. Essentially what this is a 2-week program for students that can identify in one of these 3 groups. Historically underrepresented groups, that would be African Americans, Asian Pacific Islanders, Hispanic Latinx students, and American Indians. Any student that identifies as LGBTQ+ in that community, and first-generation students. If you're not familiar with that term, a first-generation student is a student whose parents have not achieved a 4-year degree. So they're the first in their family to be pursuing that pathway. Any student that's within those identified groups can enroll in the Smart Start program, in which you move into campus about a week before everyone else on campus. The reason for that is to get you acclimated and to have a little bit of an easier transition into the college experience, because we know that this is one of the biggest life transitions that you will go through, is going from a high school student to living on your own in college. So with that earlier move in, you have a little bit of a smoother or easier transition. And then you also are paired with students that are in the same place as you and are going through the same things. And so it's just kind of a way to bring you to campus earlier, get you a little bit more familiar with on-campus resources, and help with that transition process. You also have access to what we call Dragon Mentors, which are upperclassmen that have been in your shoes before and can provide some guidance to you, as well as faculty members that will assist you. There's also a math class component built into it, because we know that math is one of the more difficult classes to adjust to in the college level. And the Smart Start program allows you to get kind of a jump start on the math, the college math that you're going to be taking very likely your very first year. So Smart Start is a great opportunity to move on campus before all of our other students and have a little bit of a smoother and more elongated transition process, make it a little easier for you. We also have our Rainbow Dragon Center. So if you are an LGBTQ plus student, or very simply an ally that wants to get involved in on-campus advocacy, outreach, different events on campus, you should definitely make use of our Rainbow Dragon Center. It's an on-campus hangout and safe space for those students and any allies. But they also do a ton of really cool events on campus. We have a student organization called Spectrum. These are LGBTQ plus students and allies that just want to be a part of the process of helping students through their transition to college by identifying as an LGBTQ plus student. So you can see some of the events that we did last fall. Spectrum's really involved with Coming Out Week every October. We also do a lot of sex education on campus. One of our bigger events is we have a drag show on our campus every February. That's very popular on our campus. But essentially, the Rainbow Dragon Center's whole goal is to make students that identify as LGBTQ plus feel supported, feel heard, feel seen, and give them access to some resources for them to feel that they're cared for at MSUM, because they are. This is obviously a big goal of ours. Related to that, there are also some scholarships available for such students as well. So this is just one of the different identity centers that we have on campus. Some other ones that can speak to different groups of students is our American Indian Center, which we actually just named after George Soule last week. So it's got a new name. But essentially, they do a lot of on-campus events. We have a powwow that's very popular in the Fargo-Moorhead area every March. That is a really cool experience. We have a pipe ceremony next month. Just different ways to make our Native American and American Indian students feel comfortable on campus and feel that their culture is respected. We also have an intercultural center for a lot of our other cultural identities, including biracial students, domestic diverse students, etc. They will do different on-campus programming and off-campus events. That bottom left picture there is a partnership that our Intercultural Center has with a local Fargo-Moorhead women's group on campus, so collaborate a lot there. And then we also have our Women's Center on campus. The Women's Center is essentially another hangout safe space for women that want to just kind of have a spot to their own, but they also are doing a lot of events and programming. One of my favorites is we do an event called Smash the Patriarchy, where women can write down on plates what frustrates them about culture or society, and then you actually smash the plate with a big hammer in the middle of campus. Very cathartic experience, kind of fun and unique. And then related to that, we also do have lactation and meditation rooms for any mothers that are on campus that need to breastfeed, which is obviously a great resource for them as well. And then finally, as far as student organizations go, like Damir was talking about, there are so many different groups for you to get involved in and feel like you have this community around you that can support you and walk alongside you in this journey. So I just picked out a handful. These are ones that are directly related to our domestic students of diversity, but there are many others for our international students as well that I didn't include on this slide. But some examples: American Indian Student Association, Asian Multicultural Organization. We have a Black Student Union that's very active on campus. Campus Feminist Organization, Diversity Dance Crew, that's a picture of those young ladies at the top right there. And then I did mention Spectrum earlier. Like Damir is saying, this is also not an exhaustive list for us, but it's meant to evoke that there are so many ways for you to find people that can support you on campus. In general, MSUM's whole prerogative is college is a great place for you to, obviously your first goal is, obtain your degree to get you into the career that you want, but also to have that personal growth and development. And we want it to be a space where you feel cared for and supported throughout. So take advantage of that Rainbow Dragon Center if you identify as such, or if you're an ally. Get involved in some of the events or programming that those other intercultural centers take part in. Join student organizations. And if you want to jumpstart on everything, start that Smart Start program too. So make use of all those. That's how you can find students that are just like you and are going through the same things. All right, that's all I got for the MSUM. I cut myself off there. That's everything for the MSU Moorhead side of things. Up next, we'll have a little bit of information on Minnesota State University, Mankato. So I'll welcome Stephen.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Scott. Hello, everyone again. So for those of y'all who never heard about Minnesota State University Mankato, we are located in Mankato, Minnesota, which is about 85 miles south of the Twin Cities area as well. So before I go into the other slides, I did forget to add one. So I want to focus on the resources that we do offer for our students in our different departments as well. So I'll be talking about our Women's Center, our LGBT Center, our Accessibility Resource Center. Then also I'll be putting a link in the chat as well for our Multicultural Center. So if you do want to go ahead and look at that, you can go ahead and do so. So with our Multicultural Center, that is home to a lot of different offices that we have. So we do have an African American Affairs office, Latinx, Asian American Affairs, and then American Indian Affairs, where each office do have a director who is always there for students and always there for advice if you have questions or if you need more resources, and also scholarships too, depending on how you see yourself too. Then also, Scott, if you want to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so with some different resources at the Women's Center office, they do provide free menstrual products and other health-related items to support their students. And also as well, you can get involved within the Women's Center too, volunteer, or we do have student workers that you can work there as well. Liz is someone who is always there and is always available to help students or does talk to as well, which I'll talk about more her later on in the next slide. Another thing too, thank you. So with VARP, so Violence Awareness and Response Program, Liz is the person who is in charge of this. Liz really helped guide discussions and host educational events that address sexual and gender violence. You can always go to her in the utmost confidence, and she is just there for your support. If you have gone through something in the past too that you don't really want to talk to anyone, but really want to mention it to in a safe environment, she is that person to do that for. Next slide, please. All right, now with the LGBT Center, we do have the second oldest LGBT Center in the country. But with that being said, they have a lot of different opportunity for students. And it is just a great place where you can just go hang out, have tea talk. And we do have a drag show as well. We have a semi-annual drag show, which is our most popular event on campus and always sold out. I like to say that because I am a drag queen who does perform at those drag shows. So if you do have questions about that, you can definitely go ahead and reach out to me. But with that being said, they also assist students with resources about coming out and then also gender dysphoria. And another thing that is great about the LGBT Center at Mankato State is that they do offer housing scholarships for transgender and non-binary students who do feel more comfortable staying in a single room. So you won't have to pay the full price of a single room if you don't want to. But another thing that's great about Mankato State is that living on campus is actually not required any year that you do go to school here. But 90% of our first-year students do live on campus, and it is highly recommended. But if you really don't feel comfortable living in the resident communities, if you talk to someone within the LGBT Center, they can definitely go and help you find off-campus housing for sure. Next slide, please. Thank you, Scott. All right, then of course, our Accessibility Resource Center. They are there to help students with mental or learning disabilities. And it's there for those different resources for if you need individual test areas, they can go ahead and accommodate that for you. And then they also include different accommodations via academic, physical access, and then also housing accommodations as well. So with all these different centers, they do offer a lot for their students and so much more than I can just put in these slides as well. So I really encourage you, if you do have questions about these different resources or centers, you can go ahead and definitely reach out to me or go on our website and view all the information there as well. And I believe that's my last slide. Is there a next one?
Nope, that is it for Mankato.
Awesome, thank you so much.
All right, and with that, we will transition to our last institution. We'll welcome Scott and Mad to the screen to present about Minneapolis College of Art and Design.
Yeah, well, I just want to introduce Mad Sparrow.
Yes, hello. Sorry, I almost knocked my water over on my table. My name is Mad Sparrow. I go by she, they pronouns, and I am an alumni from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. I'm also queer identifying.
So we are the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and we are a community of equal opportunities and inclusivity. We are a small private nonprofit institution. If you want to go to the next slide, we have about 800 students total. And we've actually been around since 1886. You know, our students do come from all around the country as well as other countries. And we're really trying to kind of add to that student experience by getting students that are of diverse backgrounds. And so we are also, as far as art schools, obviously we're a little bit different than some of the other schools that are represented today, but we're really trying to find some students that are really excited and energetic and just have a lot to bring. And part of that is the experience that you go through being honed and refined in your art practice, and being open through critique and through experience to kind of collaborate and understand others' points of view. So if we can go to the next slide. You know, I will say that a majority of our students do come for design, but we also offer fine arts and media arts areas, as well as arts entrepreneurship. We get quite a few transfer students, so maybe students that have started in other areas, and about a quarter of our population are first generation college students. So we feel that that's pretty strong. Next slide.
64% of our students identify as female, 30% identify as male, and 6% identify as non-binary. While 29% of our students are undergrads in our undergrad program are students of color and Indigenous students.
So some of the support services that we have on campus are the Learning Center and Disability Services, and that's a very extensive resource for a number of our students. We do encourage utilizing those services. There's student counseling and wellness. There's also services that I feel anyone can benefit from, such as peer tutoring and mentoring, student success coaching, as well as ESL services, English as a second language, and accessibility for all of our students.
Mm-hmm. And additionally, those learning service and disability accommodation centered, they also help you not only with your classroom accommodations, but also with your housing accommodations. So if you needed something in your dorm for yourself, then they would help you get that, whether that's registering an emotional support animal or just getting a standing desk in there for you.
I would say also on campus, we have several gender neutral bathrooms. We are pretty inclusive and open to kind of all sorts of gender identity and expression on campus. Next slide, please. And so, and MAD can actually speak to this as they are an alumni of MCAD, but there's really no real weird. I think everyone that comes here is unique, is maybe a more nuanced way of putting it. But it is really about the experience of going through art school and kind of learning from others. And so it kind of benefits us to be put and exposed to other people, other backgrounds.
Yeah, I always like to, like, when I came to MCAT, I was coming from like a super rural town in the middle of Iowa. And when I first got to campus, we went on a van ride over to go get some groceries. And that was facilitated by the school. And I remember sitting in the back of the van, and it was really quiet because everyone was anxious because it was first week of school and nobody wanted to be the first person to talk. And then this one kid in the very back of the van was like, has anybody seen the new episode of like Blue Exorcist? And everyone exploded about like how much they love anime or how much they like this comic or this cartoon. And I always thought that that was really interesting because coming from a more rural area, you didn't geek out about that stuff as much. And I felt like that was always expressed in sort of every facet. Like everyone was very open and accepting of one another too.
So next slide. Then also being a smaller school, we have approximately 50 clubs on campus. These are student run and student organized. So we have a few of the clubs that do represent different groups. This is something that anyone, whatever you feel like, you can start a club. If there's a certain board game that you're interested in and want to get people together, that's one example. But there are different groups that, of course, are organizing and doing different things. Mad, do you want to speak about the People's Library?
Yeah, the People's Library is sort of a local, it started out just as an MCAD run club by MCAD students. And it was just a place to talk and organize. It's sort of an activist group as well. They would sort of bring students to protests. They would work on artwork that would be, you know, speaking to current events in the cities and outwards. It started as just a club at MCAD, but it's since sort of exploded throughout the Twin Cities. And now not only are the current students still very active in this club, but so are the alumni who sort of brought it in. So it's become more of a community sort of club that's centered in MCAD.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any questions, we of course encourage them now, or if you'd like to go to our website or email admissions, we will be in contact with you.
All right, and with that, we have concluded the presentations of all of our content areas. And now we want to open it up for any questions that y'all might have, whether it's specific to our institutions or it's more generally about the college search process or what it's like to be a student that identifies as X, Y, or Z on campus. We'd be happy to answer any of those questions. So as a reminder, use that Q&A feature at the bottom. While we give you a minute or two to submit your questions, I think one good thing that each of us could go around and talk about is how best to visit campus and learn more about each of our institutions, because visiting a campus is always the best way to learn about it. And so For example, if you want to visit MSUM, we have campus visits every day, Monday through Friday at 9:30 and 1:30. So you can sign up for those online. I can actually put the link in the chat if we need it. Or over at MEA Break coming up in a couple weeks here, we're going to host big visit opportunities on campus as well. So that's how you can visit MSUM, but I'll invite any of my colleagues to join in on how to visit their campus as well.
Yeah, right now our tours at MCAD are a bit full, but we are still doing sort of individual signups. So if you wanted to contact your individual admissions counselor, which you can find that out on the website if Scott wants to drop a link in there. And you can find out who your counselor is based on your zip code. You can contact them and say, hey, I have these couple weeks in this month that I'm looking to come do a visit. So that's one way. Otherwise, we do have some events that happen on the weekend that are coming up, like Experience MCAD Day is going to be coming up in November, and that's just for tours. So that's a chance to get in on a weekend and not a weekday.
Yeah, so I just dropped 2 links in the chat. Hopefully you can identify the 2 different ones there, but one is for our in-person visits, and then one is for our virtual visit options. And so we have continued to do virtual options because of the fact that not everyone has access to get to us, right? And so we are continuing to do our virtual visits. So you can do an in-person information session and tour, or virtual information session or a virtual tour. With our virtual information sessions, or our in-person ones rather, there is a cap on how many we can have. And so they tend to fill up quickly. And so you might find that the only slot that is open is 2 months from now or something like that, which again, accessibility and things like that, it's a thing. But we're trying to continue to be safe and keep people safe, right? Regardless of if that is people on campus, right? Or those who are wanting to visit campus. We're trying to make sure that we're keeping safety in mind. And so we are capping our numbers depending on the day, of course. So we are offering visits, in-person visits, at least Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah, and at Mankato State, so we do have those weekday visits. We have 4 each day, Monday through Friday, and I'll go ahead and send a link there as well. And then we also have these open houses, which happens every single weekend this Saturday, well, this month in October, and also we have some in spring. I will say, if you're trying to visit Mankato State, go ahead and do an open house, because there's going to be a free lunch. Like I always say, utilize all your resources, make sure free food is going to be free. So all the information is in there as well. And we do have those online tours as well, if you don't have the means to visit our campus too.
Awesome, great plugs. Okay, one last reminder, if you have any questions, let us know now. We got a couple minutes left in the presentation here. And a more general reminder, it is College Knowledge Month. So if you are looking to do any college applications, now is the time to do it. Don't wait for the last week of October. Do it this first week. It saves you the same amount of money, but you benefit from 3 extra weeks of time. So definitely get your applications in. If you're looking at any of our institutions, get your applications in as soon as possible. So so far, no questions in the chat.
I can add something that I just learned actually yesterday or so is with the CSS profile now. Typically, when you are submitting the CSS profile to specific institutions, it costs a certain amount of money, but now you can submit CSS profiles for free if your family makes $100,000 or less now in terms of income, right? And so that is something to make note of. When I was applying, you had to pay for all of them to get sent out. And I can tell you, I applied to like 15 schools, and that was a really bad decision, right? Because SAT scores and all of that stuff. So if you are someone whose family makes under $100,000 a year, you can take advantage of being able to not only submit your application, right, through Common App, QuestBridge, or Coalition application free, but also now both the FAFSA and the CSS profile for free.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. All right. Any questions for us, anybody? Let us know. We'll hang out for another minute or two here. Otherwise, panelists, anything else to add on this topic? I think, we showed a lot of great support services. So I think that's helpful. Matt? Any
Oh,
other?
sorry. I thought you said Matt. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I feel like one way, if you're shy and don't want to talk about it right now, or if you're viewing this online later, feel free to just reach out to your admissions counselor and ask. And if you are specifically wanting to ask about to someone who has experienced that, usually they might know someone like an alumni or a current student who can talk to you about how they feel the resources work on campus too.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so I don't see any questions in the chat. So I think with this, we can begin to wrap up. Just once again, thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate you taking some time out to learn about these services. Thank you to all of my fellow panel members for contributing their thoughts as well. And we will turn it over to Greg to wrap us up.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my last screen here. And thank you for joining us today. As a reminder, when you close this window, there'll be a quick 5-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide to help us here at strivescan.com. We encourage you to check back on the schedule, sign up for more sessions, and remember, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all of the sessions recordings at strivescan.com/Minnesota. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.